File log, Night Hunter. Obsidian level access code required. Access granted. Welcome, Tech Priest Adept Omega. Initiating data scan. Data scan complete. Transferring selected file, Night Hunter. File transferred. Beginning Vox transcript. Greetings, subjects of the Omnisaya. I, Adept Omega, compromise the findings of the battle between the Carcharadon Astra and the 8th Legion. The incident itself took place on Zartak, a small jungle planet on the edge of a star system on the edge of a galaxy. Were it not for the adamantium ore that came from the mines, the incident itself likely would not have gathered much attention. But a Mortis cry from the prison's astropath was enough to draw the attention of Interrogator Ogum Nozenglu of Inquisitor Lord Rosencrantz, and as such, it drew the attention of the Inquisition. Had it not been for this, the incident itself would have likely been forgotten. Zartak itself was a small jungle planet with adamantium mines. The locals long ago had made a deal with the Adeptus Arbites to take over the mines. Freeing the locals of the burden of the mines while also increasing the system's tithe by threefold. As a result, the mines themselves had become a penal colony that was overseen by the Adeptus Arbites. The Night Lords themselves were led by Aemon Kull, or the Prince of Thorns. A former youth who was adopted into the nobility of House Kull until, in an act of revenge, he deactivated the defenses of the planet, which resulted in the Night Lords appearing, torturing his adopted family, and virus bombing his home. Probably not what he expected, but he got what he deserved in a sense of having to hear his adopted family's screams while the Night Lords searched for him, found him, and put him through the trials to join the 8th, which to his credit he was able to pass and eventually came to command the warband of Night Lords. The warband itself was relatively young by the standards of the Long War, with their Chaos Sorcerer Shadrith considering the warband to be an inexperienced pack of warriors who were an embarrassment to the Long War. The Imperial Truth was a penal ship on its way to deliver their next shipment of cargo, the cargo being prisoners for the mines with an attrition rate of roughly 8 months on average. Due to either luck or actions of the Night Lord Sorcerer Shadrith and his demonic ally, the ship was set to arrive a week ahead of schedule, which it did, but only after the Night Lord's Raptor Claw and Night Lord Sorcerer had boarded the ship and taken it over. The reason was to use the penal ship as a diversion to draw the garrison to reinforce what was thought to be a riot, weakening the planet's defenses as a whole so the Night Lords themselves could sneak in, teleport their Terminators in, take over the headquarters, and take over the mines as a whole, which they did so without a hitch. Once they took over, they began their harvest, which involved freeing all the prisoners and letting them go out on it for a free-for-all. Once that began to grow boring, they would throw in a bunch of weapons, let them go at it for a free-for-all again, then corral all the prisoners together and harvest the strongest for the Legion. The Chaos Sorcerer himself, though, was looking for a youth named Makadoran Skell, a psyker of incredible power who had not yet awakened. The reason was to bind him to his demonic ally and renew their vow, which is kind of ironic since the Night Lords themselves hate using chaos in the warp. While this happened, the remaining claws of the Night Lords took over the other 7 sub-precincts leading into the main precinct, which they would then take the prisoners and corral them towards the main precinct for the harvest. The only exception was the Adeptus Arbites station in Precinct 8, who the Night Lords intentionally spared in order to corral the Adeptus Astartes that were pursuing them into a certain path that they had predetermined. Soon after the 8th Legion's arrival came the Carcharadon Astra's 3rd Company, led by Baelishar, Reaper Prime, and Company Master, accompanied by 5 Red Brethren who acted as the Chapter Master, Tybros the Red Wake's eyes and ears throughout the fleet, which is a little funny since the Carcharadons are supposed to be incredibly disciplined, but the presence of the Red Brethren implies that this either isn't the case, or the Chapter Master is a micromanager, as Baelishar himself even stated that the Red Brethren weren't there to supplement their numbers, but to ensure his will was carried out. The reason the Carcharadons were there was for the Red Tithe, needing the tithe of people themselves to fill the holds of their predation fleet, which included the gunnery crew, Engineerium laborers, chapter serfs, overseers, bondsmen, and aspirants, while their chief librarian, Te Korangi, or the Pale Nomad, had come to find the same psyker the sorcerer was searching for, but to introduce him into the ranks of the librarians. On arriving into the system, the Carcharadons boarded the Imperial Truth and found traces of chaos sorcery in the form of these weird tentacle things. After fighting their way through them, they made their way to the bridge and found that no survivors, or any Night Lords or Chaos Sorcerers for that matter, for they had already evacuated. So they left and blew up the Imperial Truth on their way out. After landing on the planet and arriving at Sub-Precinct 8, the Carcharadons made contact with the surviving Arbites forces and began to make their way to their main precinct. The first blood came to the Sharks when Bael'Shar had a feeling the Night Lords were laying an ambush. Knowing that they would not act if they didn't think they were cut off and isolated, he decided in true Carcharadon fashion to spring the trap. Going forth alone, he was attacked by several Night Lord raptors before the Carcharadon Company champion slew 2 of them. The remaining Night Lords fell back as the Carcharadons rushed forward. In response, the Night Lords set off a series of explosives that cut apart the squad of Carcharadons from the rest of the company, leading them to a small area that held little to no cover. Rather than die, Bael'Shar ordered a retreat to the only tunnel left, which also held no cover, and in true Night Lord fashion, the 8th Legion followed them for the kill, only to fall to their own bait and bleed tactic as the Carcharadons teleported the 5 Red Brethren right into the middle of the traitors. The remaining Carcharadons turned and began to attack, catching the Night Lords into a pincher movement. The only reason the Night Lords were able to successfully retreat was due to an attack by 2 Night Lord raptors, one which was killed, and the other managed to take a shark tooth from the Red Brethren before retreating himself. Throughout the rest of the mines and sub-precincts, similar tactics happened as the Sharks slowly drove the Night Lords back. The Night Lords laying ambushes, the Sharks slowly moving forward and springing the ambushes, the Night Lords retreating but the Carcharadons refusing to follow in pursuit and be bait and bleeded, all while making as little sound as possible, until eventually the Prince of Thorns himself realizes his mistake in underestimating them. So he orders a general retreat with all the prisoners in tow, taking every surviving prisoner, and letting loose their Warp Brethren, also known as the Warp Claws. The 5 Warp Talons, which were former Night Lords that, kind of fell to warp mutations, were given the Shark Tooth by the Prince of Thorns and released for the hunt, their targets being the Red Brethren themselves. Throughout this time, the Chaos Sorcerer and the Pale Nomad had both been hunting for the Psyker Boy, who was fleeing both of them, with the Pale Nomad cutting the Sorcerer off from his demonic ally, and the Chaos Sorcerer in turn doing a bunch of blood rituals and making a bunch of blood sacrifices, while swearing his soul to the demon to re-establish contact, while attacking the Psyker from both himself and his demonic ally. So props to the Pale Nomad for holding them off for so long, and when they did re-establish contact, they were able to find the boy quickly. Strangely enough, it was the Sharks who found him first though, with the Pale Nomad scouts who were being sent into the tunnels had found him when a group of prisoners were debating on killing him or not. Most of them had wanted to kill him as he was another mouth to feed, while another wanted to spare him because he knew he was a Psyker or Witchborn, which the first group saw as another reason to kill him, only to be gunned down by the Carcharadon scouts right before the Chaos Sorcerer and his demons arrived to kill the scouts and capture the boy for themselves. Soon after, the Red Brethren, who despite being the most veteran and experienced in the chapter, had been the most undisciplined in this battle, wanting to move quickly and seeing as the general worked beneath them, they had pushed far ahead in their haste and were too far away from the Brethren when the Warp Talon struck. Earlier, one of the Terminators had fallen against 2 Night Lords in a clash, leaving only 4 Terminators against the 5 Warp Talons in this engagement. The leader of the Red Brethren, Kahu, managed to take down 1, but otherwise the Warp Talons did their job well and eliminated the Terminators before retreating. Following this, the Pale Nomad along with a squad of scouts and volunteers followed a secret tunnel left open intentionally by the Night Lords, which they knew had been a trap but saw no other way forward. On springing the trap, the squad was quickly eliminated by the remaining warp talons and hordes of Night Lord cultists while the Pale Nomad moved forward to engage the Chaos Sorcerer himself. He put up a valiant fight, but he was beaten down and captured. While this happened, the Night Lords began counterattacking the Carcharadons on every front leading to the precinct, with the 4th squad getting buried when several cultists hid amongst a mass of prisoners fleeing the precinct. The reason the Sharks didn't gut them down was because they needed the survivors for the Red Tithe, and so far things weren't going so well on that aspect. The rest, however, more or less fought each other to a stalemate. Following this, the Prince of Thorns and the First Claw rejoined the Chaos Sorcerer as well as the Chaos Terminators, who had the Pale Nomad as prisoner, and the Sucker Boy in a ritual circle, much to their disgust as Night Lords hate sorcery and all that warp stuff. While the Sorcerer prepared to bind the boy to the demon, the Prince of Thorns, in true Night Lord fashion, stabbed him in the back with his Ruin Blade, killing the Sorcerer and starting a fight between the Night Lords and the demons. 4th squad, who had survived and made their way out of the tunnels in an attempt to rejoin the brothers, had come across the site, but on seeing the Pale Nomad tied down, they prepared to attack in order to free him. But before they could, the Pale Nomad had empowered the boy with psychic energy and had finally awoken him, shortening the void shield for just a few seconds, but enough for First Squad to teleport in and start slaughtering demons and Night Lords alike, while the remaining members of 4th Squad charged in to engage as well, creating a three-way battle between the Night Lords, Carcharadons, as well as the demons and Warp Talons. Throughout the fight, both sides took massive losses, with Baelshar himself engaging 2 Night Lords, a Terminator and a Raptor in a 2v1. After taking down the Chaos Terminator, he began to chase the Night Lord Raptor before being challenged by the Prince of Thorns himself, which Baelshar answered without a word. In the following epic duel, the two fought well, but the Prince of Thorns proved to be the better warrior, knocking the company master down and getting ready to deliver the final blow, when the Pale Nomad, who was freed by the only surviving Arbiter, saved him with a warp attack, knocking down the Prince of Thorns and collapsing a mountain on him. On seeing the Prince of Thorns' death, the Terminator champion fled, freeing a Night Lord Raptor champion and retreating with the remaining Night Lords as the Prince of Thorns' First Claw fought to the death. They retreated to their fleet and disengaged, having failed in their harvest and losing a number of their champions and veterans, as well as failing to capture their slaves and aspirants that they needed and desired. The Carcharadons themselves had succeeded in the Red Tithe, but if you could really call it a victory, having arrived with over 86 Void Brothers and 5 of the Red Brethren, they now stood at only 36 Void Brothers for a tithe of only 30,000 souls, of which only several thousand youths would be put through the trials to become aspirants, to which the Pale Nomad predicted less than 3 dozen would actually survive to become aspirants. For Zartak, only one Arbiter survived the encounter, the one who freed the Pale Nomad during the climax of the battle, only to be abandoned and left to die in the empty mines for her trouble. By the time Interrogator Agwam Nazawagu and his retinue arrived to Zartak to investigate the incidents, they still living, if barely Arbiter, had lain amongst other corpses to die. But against all odds, she managed to survive. Okay, thank you to everybody who stayed until the end. I'm gonna see how far I could take this and see if I could at least break 1,000 subscribers. So if you're listening to this, hit that subscribe button and see you guys next time. Alright, later.